or kayan, he has in mind an event, state, or process that can be appealed to in explaining another event, state, or process without any metaphysical commitment to any occult connection between explanandum and explanans. In Chapter 1, Nagarjuna, we shall see, argues against the existence of causes and for the existence of a variety of kinds of conditions. Things are not, however, quite this simple. For in the philosophical context in which Nagarjuna is writing, there are those indeed, including most Buddhist philosophical schools, who would accept his classification of conditions, but who would then assert that in order for conditions to function as explanatory, they must themselves have an independent inherent existence. Some, such as the Sarvastivadas or Sautantrika-Svatantrikas, despite other differences between these schools regarding causation, would argue that the conditions must exist as substantially distinct from the conditioned. Others, such as the Cittamatra, would argue that they can be of the same nature. Nagarjuna will evade these particular debates, however, by emphasizing that the conditions he has in mind must be thought of as empty of inherent existence and connected to the phenomena they condition neither through absolute difference or through identity. The argument against causation is tightly intertwined with the positive account of dependent arising and of the nature of the relation between conditions and the conditioned. Nagarjuna begins by stating the conclusion. One entities are neither self-caused nor do they come to be through the power of other entities. That is, there is no causation when causation is thought of as involving causal activity. 18. 1. Neither from itself, nor from another, nor from both. Nor without a cause. Does anything whatever, anywhere arise? The fourfold classification of positions with regard to the relation between an active cause and its effect is meant to be exhaustive. But it is important to keep in mind that Nagarjuna was aware of philosophical schools espousing each of these four positions. And each of them has something to say for itself if we begin by supposing a model of causation involving powers as essential properties of substantially real causes. The first view held prominently by Samkhya philosophers 19 is that all causation is really self-causation. A proponent of this view would argue that for a cause to be genuinely the cause of an effect, that effect must exist potentially in that cause. If it does not, then the cause might exist without the effect, in which case the cause would fail to necessitate the effect, in which case it would not be a genuine cause. This is not to say that effects exist in full actuality in their causes, but that they have a genuine potential existence when their causes exist. In this case, since the effect is present in the cause, it already has a kind of existence prior to its appearance. And it is the fact of this prior potential existence that accounts for the causal character of the cause. So we can say, on this view, that a thing's prior potential existence is what gives rise to its later actual existence. So effects are in this sense self-caused. The typical kind of example appealed to in order to defend this model of causation is the seed and sprout relation. The sprout, although only actual after germination, is potential in the seed. Its potentiality is what makes the seed a seed of that sprout. Moreover, on this view, the seed and sprout cannot be distinguished as substantially different. Intuitively it makes sense to say that they are two stages of the same entity. But the seed is the cause of the sprout. Hence, the proponent of this view concludes, the sprout is self-caused. Causation from another is a more familiar way of thinking of causation and was the dominant doctrine of causation in the Buddhist philosophical milieu in which Nagarjuna was working. On this view, causes and their effects are genuinely distinct phenomena. They can be characterized and can in principle exist independently of one another. But they are related by the fact that one has the power to bring the other about. The relations between parents and children is an example often appealed to in illustrating this doctrine. Parents bring their children into existence. But they are not identical entities. The doctrine of causation by both self and other emerges through a juxtaposition of the doctrine of causation from another and the doctrine of self-causation. Let us return to the example of the seed. A proponent of other causation might point out that seeds that are not planted, watered, and so forth, do not sprout. If the sprout were present in the seed, these other conditions, which are manifestly other than the sprout, would be otiose. On the other hand, the proponent of self-causation might reply, no matter how much you water, nourish, and exhort an infertile seed without the potentially existent sprout nothing happens. So all of the distinct conditions in the world will not suffice absent the potential existence of the effect. The happy compromise doctrine that emerges is the doctrine of causation by both. Effects are the result of the joint operation of the effect itself in potentio and the external conditions necessary to raise the effect's mode of existence from potentiality to actuality. The fourth alternative view of causation is that things simply spontaneously arise from no particular causes, that there are no links at all between events. What might motivate such a view? Well, as we shall see, and as any reader of Sextus Empiricus, Hume, or Wittgenstein will recall, there are powerful reasons for believing that none of the three alternatives just rehearsed can be made coherent. And if one believed that only if there were either some identity or difference between causes and effects could there be a relation of dependency between phenomena, one would be forced to the nihilistic conclusion that things simply arise causelessly. Nonetheless, Nagarjuna notes, there are conditions, in fact four distinct kinds, that can be appealed to in the explanation and prediction of phenomena. 2. There are four conditions: efficient condition, percept-object condition, immediate condition, dominant condition, just so. There is no fifth condition. The general classification of conditions Nagarjuna employs is pretty standard in Indian and especially in Buddhist accounts of explanation. But there are two specific features of Nagarjuna's presentation that should be noted. First, since he is writing with specifically soteriological goals in mind, which require the practitioner to develop a deep insight into the nature of her own mind, there is a specifically psychological emphasis in the presentation. We must be aware both of this emphasis and of the natural generalization away from that particular domain that the account supports. Second, it will be of paramount importance to Nagarjuna that the analysis of the relation of conditions to the conditioned involves ascribing an either inherent existence or causal power to the conditions. Efficient conditions are those salient events that explain the occurrence of subsequent events. Striking a match is the efficient condition for its lighting. My fingers depressing the keys of this computer is the efficient condition for the creation of this text. The percept-object condition is in its primary sense the object in the environment that is the condition for a mind's perception of it. So when you see a tree, the physical tree in the environment is the percept-object condition of your perceptual state. Now things get vexed here in a number of ways. First, there is no unanimity in the world, or even in Buddhist philosophy, regarding the analysis of perception and, hence, no consensus on the view just adumbrated that external objects are the percept-object conditions of perceptual awareness. Idealists, for instance, argue that the percept-object conditions are to be located in the subject. Second, many fans of percept-object conditions, on both sides of the idealist/realist divide, argue that the substantial existence of such a condition, and the appropriate exercise of its power to produce perception, is a necessary condition of perception. Nagarjuna will be concerned to reject any such analysis, whether idealist or realist, in virtue of his attack on the notions of substantial existence, substantial difference, and causal power.